storm inside my heart. I'll never be the same, 'cause you change every part. When you take over me, consume all of me, steal over me, breathe into, come take over me.
Hey guys.
Hello.
So thanks for joining us. This is Thursday Night Live from the couch. So I know last week we did a Q&A and you're probably like, where's the guitar? Where's the piano? Where's the studio? Well,
Where's the table?
we just wanted to take an opportunity to kind of give you like our testimonies and our backstories.
This time from the couch.
Yeah, so it's not going to be like a regular thing. It's not like we're just going to turn this into like a talking platform. It's not, this is our band, this is music, that's where our hearts are. But we also felt like we wanted to kind of let you in on our stories and our history, and this is part of it. So,
Yeah, and we've talked about from the beginning kind of doing this as well, and updates with what's going on with our music once in a while. If we're out of town both at the same time, and it happens to be a Thursday, we would also do a live at our same time of 8 o'clock to give you an update, whether it's from a hotel room, hey, maybe if we're touring or something, right? In the
One day.
in the future, yes.
Yeah.
The Lord's will, you know. But we will definitely, next week we'll be back in our studio doing some music that we're preparing for you. But tonight we thought we'd, like Katie was saying, share some of our story. We've done this with our Patreon community, so some of you guys who are on a Patreon, you've heard a little bit of this. So something similar to that, but we wanted to do it on our YouTube platform tonight.
yeah, so tonight we're actually focused on me and like my testimony, my history. And I mean, honestly, it's just really hard to get into the details. Well, especially me, I'm such a detail person, but the details of a lifetime in such a short amount of time here on our Thursday night. So we'll just kind of an overview, but in depth on a couple little things. That'll be kind of the way that it goes.
But
As-
before we start,
As always,
wait,
things. Wait, as
Couple
always,
things.
wait, I just, 1 second. I know where you're going.
All good things.
I'm not going to take away from what you're about to do.
I was
I'm
going to
okay
say,
with it.
hit the like button. We
I-
keep forgetting to say that.
Okay, yes. Well, please, I mean, please, please like me. But also, see, and you, what was I going to say?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. If you, as always, if you have questions for us, if you have questions for me about my testimony, my history, please leave them in the comments
Yes, we'd love to
because we
hear from you
read
guys.
those and we can respond to them.
And if you notice with Katie's
I knew this was going to, this is
nail
what
polish,
I knew you were going to bring
we
this
shared
up.
this on Patreon last week,
Ugh.
but we wanted to share this tonight because she still has this. If you notice, show them your pretty
My pretty nails.
that they're red and an accent nail of gold,
Because...
Niner colors.
Okay, well, now we'll actually tell them we are not, I know this is Thursday Night Live from the couch, but we are not live. I am currently in Washington visiting my grandparents for my grandpa's 95th
Should have said that
birthday.
right away. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
so we're
we'll
not-
have a description.
We're not actually live tonight. This was a pre-record because we didn't want to, again, like, I know we've done this a couple of times where we just don't want to miss a night with you guys, and this is one of them. And so I'm actually on a road trip with my mom to visit my grandparents in Washington. And so by the time you see this lovely nail polish will be gone because I am going out of my mind. I am not a red and gold person.
Yes, but you asked me.
My fault. I asked James, because he often has an opinion and he cares. And I said, okay, what color should I paint my nails? And he said, I want red. I want this color red and I want gold on just this finger. He was very specific. Because we went to the 49er game.
Yes, so it was perfect for the Niner game.
Yeah, so we went to, by the time you see this, it's not last week, but for us it was last weekend. We went to watch the 49ers play the Cowboys at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, and it was
just the energy
epic.
there. It was just full crowd.
Yeah.
amazing. I had no idea. I knew the Niners were so much better this year, and they're probably going to win. But I thought it was going to be a tough game. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be that much of a.
It was a really fun. I mean, obviously, it's always fun when your team wins, but it was a really fun experience from start to finish.
Oh yeah, I was hugging
James was
strangers.
hugging strangers. It was a
The
whole
guy
thing.
next to me, just like we're like, yeah.
It was
Anyway.
a whole thing. So moving on.
Mhm.
So now we're gonna stop focusing on you. But yes, so I am like anxious to get this color off my hands. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Won't have time for a couple more days still, but it's coming.
Mhm.
So how should
Yeah.
we kick this off?
Well,
It's a little bit of a Q&A
Yeah, maybe we
with
should
just
ask you a
James
question.
like just kicking things off with like asking me questions to kind of help me flesh out
Mhm.
really what I want to say.
Well, since we're talking about your background, and so much of our music centers around our faith, our story together, and God is such a big part of who we are. For you, how old were you when you really were aware of who God it was?
So, I was actually 3 years old when I got saved. And my mom was like, "You're too young. You don't know who Jesus is." But I was listening to my Salty the Singing Songbook record. And she said that I just came in and I found her and I said, "How do I ask Jesus into my heart?" So I was actually really little when that seed was planted. Now, I grew up in a Christian home. My parents are believers. But just because you grow up with Christian parents in a Christian home does not mean that it's a home of peace. My home was not a home of peace. It was a home of chaos. And that didn't start right away. Like, I know there were years when I was little when it wasn't. I mean, things were never super easy. My dad was an iron worker for my whole childhood, which is a very dangerous job. He knew multiple people that actually died on the job. And he was union. I grew up in a small town called, which is not so small anymore, but it was small when I was little,
Still pretty small.
called Tehachapi, which is like when you're going on the Grapevine on the 5, it's like on the other side of those mountains, off the 58. It's sort of halfway between like Bakersfield and Lancaster.
California, for those.
Oh,
who
yes,
don't-
in California. So it's like
Central.
north, southern.
Central.
Yeah, well, we're central right now,
Yeah.
and it's like 2 hours,
Mhm.
2.5 hours from where we are. Anyways, so my dad's union was in LA, and so he was commuting because when your union is based in, we'll say Los Angeles County, I don't know exactly where it was, then that's where the jobs are. So that means his commute was, for us, like 3.5 hours each way. So it was like and depending upon the job, you could be working 410s, 512s. And what that means is the first number is how many days a week. The second number is how many hours a day. So it was a lot of him being gone because he was at work, and sometimes having to live down there depending upon the position. And then also seasons of him being out of work because it's union. But when I was, I'm getting cloudy on the dates, but I was little. I would say 7, maybe, or 8. My mom could correct me. My dad was a passenger on a local transit bus, and there was an accident that injured him quite badly, and it made him out of work for like a couple of years. He still suffers from that. And in that time, that is when my home was a home of chaos, because when I was 10, my older brother started drinking, and when I was 11 is when he started doing drugs. And that's when it became a home of chaos. And in that time, that is also where I developed this perfection issue in me, because I felt like I needed to be perfect so that my home would be okay, so my parents would be okay. And that created like seeds of issues that I would have to overcome as an adult. But in the chaos of that, in my need to sort of escape that, I didn't know where else to go but church. And so what I was doing was I was walking to the Baptist church that was across the freeway, highway. It was across the highway from our house, but again, small town. So it was technically like just a couple of blocks away, but I would walk to church because I would go to the youth group. But the youth pastors, I felt like, were just really out of touch. They were much older than I thought a junior high youth pastor should be. And I didn't want to play games. I didn't want to like let people into my personal space. And I didn't have relationships. I felt like no one could relate to what I was going through. And I had already spent a couple of years of just lonely because of the fact that I didn't really have relationships. I just isolated a lot in my bedroom. And so really the Lord was my only friend. And so what I was doing was I was walking to church, but I would ditch because I didn't want to actually go. I didn't want to play games. I didn't want to be around people. I just wanted to be alone because I'm introverted and I wanted to isolate, and I was hurting and I didn't know how to talk to people about that. I didn't have people that I felt like I could trust because I didn't want to talk to somebody and then have them think poorly about my mom, who's amazing and who was going through her own season of hurt and pain. And I didn't want people to judge my family or my parents, and I didn't want the judgment. I had fear of things coming around and hurting my parents. And so it was really a protection thing, and it was messed up. Like, I was too young to be carrying all of this stuff. And so I would ditch, and I had a couple different safe places I would go. Sometimes I would break into the nursery, and I had quiet time, and it was just me and the Lord, and we would talk to each other. And that's when he became my best friend, and that's when he became my dad. The town that I grew up in, when I was little, there were two options. You could do drugs and get pregnant, or you could sit in your room and do nothing. And I opted to sit in my room alone and do nothing. And I was just counting the days until I wasn't a kid anymore, because I watched my friends' older siblings grow up and leave, and everybody came back. It was like this magnet where everybody came back. And I was like, no, when I'm getting out, I'm not coming back. And I know that you hear that a lot about small towns. Like, when I leave, I'm not coming back. But I really felt like that was not where I was supposed to be. I needed to get out. And so that was one of the things that was a huge priority for me, was not remaining there. My time there was riddled with hurt. It was just hurt. But that, I would say that is the one awesome thing that came out of my childhood and growing up, is my relationship with God. Because while the seeds were planted young, and my faith was always my own, it was never my parents' faith. That was one thing that my mom always encouraged, was my own faith. Like, I'm so grateful for who my parents are and who they are as believers, because it has really trained me up in that. But it really took root in junior high. in my times of isolation, when I would isolate myself to spend time with him, that is when it really took root.
Yeah. And as we're obviously doing music together, and this is a big part of Changing Names and what we're, doing together with these live streams, when did you know that God was really calling you to music?
So, in my quest to not be a kid anymore, I chose to skip my senior year and graduate early. So I graduated high school when I was 16, and I did not want to go to college. I was actually taking night classes at a local JC, but I just went straight to work. And at the time, I was working for a local construction company that was owned by a family that I already had a relationship with. In fact, one of the sons of this family was my, at the time, high school youth pastor. And I would go into the high school classes. It was junior high when I was isolating. And when I graduated, I just sort of became like one of the leadership because I wasn't technically in high school anymore. And I was desperate to know what my purpose was. And we actually took the youth group. I say it like I wasn't a youth anymore, but I guess in my mind I wasn't, despite the fact that I was still technically 16. But we took the youth group to Joy Fest at Magic Mountain, which if you don't know what Joy Fest was, it was basically like a bunch of Christian artists would just come and just play a bunch of concerts
all around the park
at all the different theaters. And
I remember Great America going to my Joy Fest over there.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And I went to the Michael W. Smith concert. It was in one of the amphitheaters.
Was Petra playing there too?
I don't remember. I think that was before my time. Because when I was going, it was DC Talk, Audio Adrenaline, Michael W. Smith.
Yes, all the same. But Petra also
I don't know.
came and played.
Because I was not a Petra girl.
Well, I understand, but I'm remembering that I might have been at that Joy Fest.
In Magic Mountain?
Magic Mountain. Mom and I went to one Joy Fest
What
time
year?
at Magic Mountain.
What year was it?
It would have been mid-90s, mid to late 90s.
Then it's entirely possible because I graduated in 96.
Yeah, it was right around that time.
So, as we're dating ourselves here, which is not my favorite thing to do, but I went to the Michael W. Smith concert, and I mean, I liked him as an artist, but I was with all the adults. Like, none of the kids were there. If they were like off riding rides at this point. Mm-hmm. And I removed myself and I went and I sat alone because that's what I do. I isolate still to this day. And I went and I sat alone and I was just crying out to God and asking him, what is my purpose? Like, what do you want for me? And he just told me ever so clearly and ever so sweetly, I want you to do that. And at the time, Michael was out on this catwalk playing his keyboard and singing his songs, and I just knew instantly that I had heard the Lord's voice clearly. There's something that happens in my spirit when the Lord speaks to me, and it just hits me in a certain way, and I knew I heard his voice clearly. And of course I had opposition and I had doubts, but the Lord continued to confirm it. Every time I would ask again, the Lord would confirm it again. So there's no room for doubt. The Lord has made something clear. You need to just be obedient to that. So that's when I knew. And then it was 45 years later. Here we are.
Not that many years.
It feels like it's been a lifetime.
Yes.
Because it has been a lifetime. But
yeah. So is there, if you had to do things over again, is there anything that you would do differently than you did back then?
I feel like there's a lot of things that I would do the same. I worked really hard to keep myself from the addictions that were rampant in my family, I worked really hard to keep myself from the compromise that I saw around me everywhere in believers, in adults, in young people. I worked really hard to keep myself from those things. And it made for a very lonely life, because when you choose to not compromise, sometimes that means you don't have relationship if everyone around you is compromising. I have zero regrets from those lonely years. I have zero regrets from the isolation because I had the Lord. So I wasn't alone. But I regret allowing my insecurity to dictate my actions. I regret allowing myself to be wounded for so long before I did the hard work to walk through the process of healing, because that perfection issue that developed in me, that I allowed and I chose, like the perfection issue, that didn't happen to me. That's something I picked up and put on for myself. No one was putting that pressure on me. That is pressure I put on myself. But what that did, the best way that I can explain it is that it almost created like a multiple personality disorder, because I was working so hard to be perfect and it was situational. And so what happens is I'm going to be
identities.
You have these different identities, because it's me trying to be perfect for this situation. It's me trying to be perfect for James. It's me trying to be perfect for this thing at church. It's me trying to be perfect, the perfect daughter. It's me trying to be the perfect sister. It's me trying to be the perfect employee. It's me trying to be all of these things. And when it's that deep rooted, like, you need the Lord to come in and you need him to pull those roots out, and you have to walk through the process of allowing that healing to take place, because otherwise you are not a whole person. And I needed the Lord to come in and fix that, because me working so hard to be perfect, it almost created also like a robotic personality. I did not know how to process emotion because I never allowed myself to feel. And when we first got married, I never cried. Like, it was a really big deal if I shed a tear, because that isn't something that I allowed. I would not allow myself to feel emotion. And so James loved it. He's like, oh, my wife is crying. And that sounds awful, but he liked seeing me be vulnerable. He liked seeing me be emotional, because
I almost forget what it was like with you not being emotional.
it was, because it was just this hard shell that I had that I didn't even know. I just was almost this robot who just did not feel. And when the Lord was walking me through the healing process, which took, I want to say, about 5 years, when he started healing me of the emotion issues, there was like a year where I would just like cry all the time, because he was teaching me how to feel emotion and how to process them. And so it was like, I almost like couldn't not cry.
It's like Data getting the motion chip and First Contact.
Yes, totally. It's like that. And so, he had to heal me of a lot of those things. And that is definitely a regret. It's a regret of mine that I not only allowed those things, but I chose them. I chose to be broken. I chose to be wounded. I chose those things, because that's what you're doing. If you're not surrendering to the Lord, if you're not asking him to show you the areas where you're broken and you're unwilling to see them, then you're choosing that brokenness. You're choosing those wounds. And that's what I was doing because I was unwilling to see that there might be something wrong. Because I had this perfectionist issue in me. I was so deceived. I thought I was perfect. But I would tell you that I knew I wasn't.
Mm.
Because I know in reality you can't be perfect. But I was pretty close. So I would say that's a huge regret. But allowing my insecurity to dictate how and when I would actually be willing to pursue the call that God put on my life, where I would allow my perfectionist issue and my insecurity to keep me from walking in the fullness of who he called me to be and walking out the call that I know he placed on my life.
Where do you feel that you are at right now in your life in relationship to your calling? All those years back when God called you to music, where do you think you're at right now, and what do you feel the Lord is calling you to give to others through your music, through our music? Where do you feel that we're at in this journey? I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but if there's something else you wanted to end with, to share with people where you think you're at right now.
Look at me not being a robot. I mean, that was just a really unexpected, sort of painful question, because I feel like I'm at the beginning.
Tissues.
No, they're like way over there. It's fine. I feel like I haven't even started yet. Like, I feel like
You've definitely started.
Have I? I guess I just still struggle with imposter syndrome. Like, I feel like I haven't even started. I'm not even where I should be. And I've been in training for so long, and like, I'm not even really at the starting line. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm not even at the starting line. I'm just still in the dugout. And I'm totally mixing sports metaphors here, but like, that's how I feel. Cause I mean, it's not like this is something that's accomplished any of the goals that we've had so far.
You're in it. You're in it, kiddo. You're in the race. What do you feel like, as a final thought, you would like to share where you feel God is leading you? Beyond the insecurities you might be feeling, that we all feel, the imposter syndrome is something that most of us face, even though it's hard. And it means a lot that you're vulnerable at sharing that, because it's good for, I think, everyone to see that. And I feel the same way, even though I know you look at me and you think that I have it all together musically and everything. My own insecurities.
You're so stinking smart with music.
Yeah.
I'm like a dud.
God has called you to things. You know this, as we have talked many times about it. And you shouldn't feel insecure about that. We're always going to have these rough edges that are being refined as we go. And that's part of being in the race. We're going to hopefully always look back and see the things that we've gotten better at. But that is not the point of the race, right?
Well, I feel like...
Because otherwise, I just want to interject my little thing. Otherwise, you're going to go back into the perfection mode.
Right. I agree with that. And I feel like one thing is that I do see the growth in me, that obviously, like, I'm not beyond insecurity. I feel like I am confident in who I am in Christ. I am confident in his call in my life. I know that he has gifted me. Like, I know who I am. That is not a question. That is not a doubt anymore. I know exactly who I am. But there's still, I mean, when I look at it from a human standpoint, like, there's still insecurity, but that isn't holding me back anymore. It's not keeping me in a place of paralysis anymore.
Yeah.
But if there would be one thing that I would want to be a takeaway, it would be, don't be afraid to ask the Lord to search you and to tell you areas where he wants to come in and heal you. Don't be afraid to walk through the difficult process of healing, Because when you get to the other side of it, it's like you can breathe, and you didn't even realize you couldn't breathe before. And knowing your identity in Christ is life-changing. You will never be the same. Once you know who he is and you know who you are in him, you will never be the same. And it will impact every decision you make in really cool ways. And it will open parts of you that you didn't know were closed off.
Good word. Thank
That
you
would
for
be what I would say.
being vulnerable.
And crying and not being a robot on camera.
I knew
Yeah.
that last question was going to take you by surprise.
Yeah, it 100%
So I apologize for that, and I don't apologize at the same time. We're going to rank because we're a little over time, especially with the countdown video. So we've gone a few minutes over now. So we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry we weren't live.
I want to remind you guys of Patreon. We'd love to have you join us. If you haven't tried Patreon yet, there's ways to check it out before you decide to become a subscriber. But if you would want to support us in that way, we encourage you to pray about it. If
We would really love the support. We need it.
Think about it.
It's patreon.com/changing names. patreon.com/changing names.
And we're going to head over there right now where we're going to be working on the next song in our album. We're
Yep.
going to be walking through that particular song. So
Yeah.
we're just kind of showing the raw process of actually writing these songs for this new project. So
Yeah.
love you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you got something out of this
Yeah.
testimony that Katie was sharing and doing this kind of interview style. When we do this again, we'll kind of reverse it and have Katie ask me some questions about my testimony. So
Yeah, we're going to be going into the behind the scenes of James. So thanks for joining us from the couch, and we will be back with you live next week.